Yo, what's up YouTube? My name's R.O. and this is the richest man in Babylon. This is my affirmation video. I wrote it here from the book. I wrote it down and then I'm gonna speak it out loud and reaffirm it to myself. So this is my affirmation video and it's about the richest man in Babylon. So yeah, there you go. You can see all my other videos. You can follow along on this whole book that I have written. The Camel Trader of Babylon. The Camel Trader of Babylon. The hungrier one becomes the clearer one's mind works. Also, the more sensitive one's becomes to the odor of food. Tarkad, the son of Azur, certainly thought so. For the 2 whole days, he had tasted no food except the small figs from over the wall of the garden. Not another could he grab before the angry woman rushed forth and chased him down the street. Her shrill cries were still ringing in his ears as he walked through the marketplace. They helped him to retain the restless fingers from the snatching of the tempting fruits of the baskets of that woman. Never before had he realized how he had much food that brought the markets of Babylon, and how much food was brought to the markets of Babylon, and how good it smelled. Leaving the markets of Babylon and how good it smelled, leaving the markets, he walked across to the inn and placed back in the fourth of the eating house. Perhaps here he might meet someone he knew, someone who he knew he could borrow a copper from and would gain him a smile of unfriendly, of something that was friendly, and maybe in the copper inn within it, it was a liberal helping. Without the copper, he knew all too well how unwelcome he would be. In his abstraction, he unexpectedly found himself face to face with one of the man he wished most to avoid. The tall, bony fingers of Dab Sir, the camel trader. Of all friends and others from whom he had borrowed because of his failure to keep his promises to repay promptly. Dasbir's face lightened up with the sight of him. Ha, 'tis Tarkad, just the one I have been seeking, that he may repay to me the 2 pieces of copper which I had lent him a moon ago. Also the piece of silver which I had lent to him before that. We are all met. I can make a good use of the coins this very day. What say, boy, what say? Tarkad stuttered and his face flushed. He had not in his empty stomach to nerve him to argue with the outspoken Dapsir. I'm very sorry, he mumbled weakly, but this day I have neither the copper nor the silver with which I could repay. Then get it. Dapsir insisted. Surely thou canst get a hold of a few coppers and a piece of silver to repay the generosity of an old friend or thy father who had aided that in the weirdness of what is everything that is happening in the need. That's the thing about affirmation videos. 'Tis because ill fortune does pursue me, thou he cannot pay. Ill fortune would have been the God's own weaknesses. Ill fortune pursues every man who thinks more of borrowing than then of repaying. Come with me, boy, while I eat. I am hungry, and I will tell you the tale. Tarkad flinched from the brutal frankness of Dab-Es-Seer, but here at least was an invitation to enter the coveted doorway of the eating house. Dab-Es-Seer pushed him to far corner of the room where they seated themselves upon small rugs. When a mighty friend of the proprietor appeared smiling, Dab-Es-Seer addressed him with his unusual freedom. Fat lizard of the desert, bring to me a leg of the goat, brown with a munch of juice and bread and all of the vegetables, for I am hungry and I want to eat much food. Do not forget my friend here. Bring to him a jug of water, have it cooled, for the day is hot. Tarkad's heart sank. Must he sit here and drink water while he watched this man devour an entire goat leg? He said nothing. He thought of nothing he could say. Dab-Es-Seer, however, knew so much things of his mind and of silence, smiling and waving his hands good naturally to the other customers of all who knew him, he continued, I just hear from a traveler just returned, and of a certain rich man of a piece of stone cut so thin of that can look through it. He put in the window of his house to keep out the rains. It is yellow, so this traveler does relate. and he has permitted to look through it and at the outside world look strange and not like it really is. What say you to say to that, Tarkat? Think of all the world could look to a man in a different color from what it is. I am done to say, he responded. The youth is much more interested in the fat leg of a goat placed before him. Well, I know to the truth that I am myself must see the world at a different color from which I see as it really is, and it is a tale I am about to relate, and hear how it goes. It is in its right color once more. Dabasir will tell a tale, whispering a neighbor's diner in a neighborhood that was dragged by his rug that was close. Another diner brought out their food and crowded in a semicircle. The crunch noisily in the ears of Tarkat and brushed with him the meaty bones. He alone was without food. Dabasir did not offer to share with him, nor even the motion to him of a small corner of the hard bread that has been broken off. And out of the fully flown platter on the floor, the tale that I am about to tell began. Dabasir, pausing to a bright, goodly chunk from the goat leg, relates to my early life and how I came to be a camel trader. Did anyone else know I was once a slave in Syria? A murmur of surprise ran through the audience, to which Dabasir listened with satisfaction. When I was a young man, continued Dabasir, offered another vicious onslaught on the goat leg. Excuse me, I don't know why I'm laughing. I learned the trade of my father with the making of the saddles. I worked with him in his shop and took to myself a wife. That's my wife. Being young and not greatly skilled, I can earn but a little, just enough to support my excellent little wife in a modest way. I craved good things which I could not afford. Soon I found the shopkeepers would trust me to pay later, even though I could not pay them at the time. Being young and without experience, I did not know that he who spends more than he earns is sowing the winds of needless self-indulgence, from which is sure to reap the whirlwinds of trouble and humiliation. So I indulged my whims for a fine raiment and brought luxuries for my good wife and our home beyond our means, and as I pay, I could for a while, all went well, but in the time I discovered I could not use my earnings both to live upon and to pay my debts. Creditors, your label began to pursue you to pay for the extravagant purchases, and your life became miserable. I borrowed from my friends, but could not repay them either. Things went from bad to worse. My wife returned to her father, and I decided to leave Babylon and seek another city where a young man might have better chances. For 2 years, I had a restless and unsuccessful life for caravan traders. From this, I fell in with a set of likable robbers who scoured the desert for unarmed caravans. Such deeds were unworthy of the son of my father, but I was seeing the world through a colored stone and did not even realize the degradation I had fallen. We met with the success on our first trip, capturing a rich haul of good and silks and valuable merchandise. This loot took for us the second time. We're not so fortunate. Just after we had made our capture, we were attacked by spearsmen of a native chief to whom the caravans paid for protection. Our 2 leaders were killed, and the rest of us were taken to Damascus, where we were stripped in our clothing and sold as slaves. It was purchased for the 2 pieces of silver by a Syrian desert chief. With my hair short and by a loincloth to wear, I was not so different from the other slaves. Being a reckless youth, I thought it was merely an adventure until my master took me before his 4 wives and told them that they could have me for lunch. Then indeed did I realize the hopelessness of my situation. These men of the desert were fierce and warlike. I was subjected to their will without weapons or a means of escape. Fearful I stood as these 4 women looked me over. I wondered if I could expect pity from them. Sarah, the first wife, was older than the others. Her face was impassive as she looked upon me. I turned from her with little consolidation. The next was a beauty who gazed at me indifferently as if I had been a worm of the earth. The 2 younger ones tittered as though if it were all an exciting joke. It seemed an age that I stood waiting sentence. Each woman appeared willing for the others to decide. Finally, Sierra spoke up in a cold voice. Of all that was said, we have plenty, but a camel tenders we have few, and there are a worthless lot. Even this day I would visit my mother who is sick with her fever, and there is no slave that I would trust to lead my camel. Ask the slave if you can lead a camel. My master thereupon questioned me what you know of camels. Striving to conceal my eagerness, I replied, I can make the kneel, I can lead them along trips without tiring. If need be, I can repair their trappings. The slave speaks forward enough, observed my master. If those so desire, Sirrah, take this man for the camel tender. So I was turned over to Sirrah, and that I will lead her camel upon a long journey to her sick mother. I looked to the occasion to thank her for her awesomeness, to tell that I was not a slave by birth, by the son of a free man, an honorable saddle maker of Babylon. I also told her much of my story. Her comments were disconcerting to me, and I pondered much afterwards on what she had said. How can you call yourself a free man when your weakness has brought you to this? If a man has in himself the soul of a slave, will he not become one, no matter what his birth, even as water seeks its level? If a man has within him the soul of a free man, will he not become respected and honored in his city, in spite of his misfortune? Maybe it was a blessing. For over a year, I was a slave and lived with slaves, but I could not become one of them. One day, Sarah asked me in the evening time, when the other slaves came to mingle and enjoy the society of each other, why does thou sit in the tent alone? To which I responded, I am pondering what you have said to me. I wonder if I have the soul of a slave. I cannot join them. So I must sit apart. I too must sit apart, she confided. My dowry was large, and my lord married me because of it. Yet he does not desire me. What every woman longs for is to be desired. Because of this, and because I am barren and have neither son nor daughter, must I sit apart. Where I am a man, I would rather die than be such a slave. But the contentions of the tribe make slaves of women. What think of thou by this time? I asked her suddenly, have the soul of a man, or have a soul of a slave? Have you a desire to repay the debts you owe in Babylon? She parried. Yes, I have the desire, but I also see no way. If you have contentedly let the years slip by and make no effort to repay, then you just let it slip by. Soul of a snare, no man is otherwise who cannot respect himself, and no man can respect himself who does not repay honest debts. But what can I do? Who am I, a slave in Syria? Stay a slave in Syria, thou weakling. I am not a weakling. I denied that fact. Then prove it. How? Does not thy great king fight for his enemies in every way he can and with every force he has? The debts are the enemies. They ran out of Babylon. You left them alone, and they grew too strong for thee. Hadst fought them as a man, thou couldst have conquered them and been honored among the townspeople. But thou had not had the soul to fight them, and behold, thy pride now has gone down into an art of slaves here in Syria. Much I thought over her unkind accusations, and many defensive phrases I worded to prove myself not a slave at heart, but I was not to have a chance to use them. 3 days later, the maid of Sarah took me to her mistress. My mother is again very sick, she said. Saddle the 2 best camels in my husband's herd. Tie on water skins and saddle bags for a long journey. The maid will give thee food at the kitchen tent that is packed, and the camels are now here wandering much of the quantity of provisions the maid has provided. Excuse me. For the mother dwelt less than a day's journey away. The maid rode the rear camel, which had followed and led the camel of the mistress. When we reached her mother's house, it was just as dark. Sarah dismissed the maid and said to me, Dabsir, hast thou the soul of a free man or the soul of a slave? The soul of a free man, I insisted. Now is the chance to prove it. Thy master has embedded deeply, and his chiefs are in a splendor of awesomeness. Take then these camels and make thy escape. Here in this bag is a raiment of thy master's to disguise thee. I will say thou hast stole thy camels and ran away while I visited my sick mother. Thou hast the soul of a queen, I told her. Much do I wish that I might lead to her happiness. Happiness, she responded, awaits not only the runaway wife who seeks it in far lands among strange people. Go thy own way, and may the gods of the desert protect thee, for the way is for the barren of food and water. I need no further urging, but thanked her warmly and was away into the night. I knew not this strange country, and had not only a dim idea of the direction in which lay Babylon, but struck out bravely across the desert toward the hills. One camel I rode, and the other I led. All the night I traveled, and all the next day, urged on by the knowledge of terrible fate that was meted out to the slaves who stole their master's property and tried to escape. Late that afternoon, I reached a rough country as uninhabitable as the desert. The sharp rocks bruised the feet of the faithful camels, and soon they were picking their way slowly and painfully along. I met neither man nor beast, and could well understand why they shunned this inhospitable land. It was such a journey from then on as a few men lived to tell of. Day after day we plodded along, food and water gave out, the heat of the sun was merciless. At the end of the 9th day, I slid from the back of my mount with the feeling that I was too weak to ever remount, and I would surely die. Lost in this abandoned country, I stretched out upon the ground and slept, waking until I first gleam of daylight. I sat up and looked about me. There was a coolness in the morning air. My camels lay dejected not far away. About me was a vast waste of broken country covered with rock and sand and thorny things. No sign of water, not sign of eat, or of man, or of a camel. Could it be that in this peaceful quiet I faced my end? My mind was clearer than it has ever been before. My body now seems of little importance. My parched and bleeding lips and dry and swollen tongue, my empty stomach, all had lost their supreme agonies of the day before. I looked across into the uninviting distances, and once again came to me the question, have the soul of a slave or the soul of a free man? Then with clearness I have realized that if I had the soul of a slave, I should have given up and lie down in the desert and die, a fitting end for a runaway slave. But if I had the soul of a free man, what then? Surely I would force my way back to Babylon, repay the people who had trusted me, bring happiness to my wife, who I truly loved, and bring peace and contentment to her parents. Thy deaths are thine enemies, and have run those out of Babylon. Syria has said, yes, it was so. Why had I refused to stand my ground like a man? Why had I permitted my wife then to go back to her father? Then a strange thing happened. All the world seemed to, of all of the different colors, though I had been looking at it through a colored stone which had suddenly been removed. At last I saw the true values in life. Die in the desert, not I. With a new vision, I saw the things that I must do. First, I would go back to Babylon and face every man to whom I owned an unpaid debt. I should then tell them that after years of wandering in misfortune, I had come back to pay my debts as fast as the gods would permit. Next, I should make a home for my wife and become a citizen of whom my parents should be proud. My debts were my enemies, but the men I owed were my friends, so for that they trusted and believed in me. I staggered weakly to my feet, but mattered thirst. They were just incidents in the round of Babylon. Within me surged the soul of a free man, going back to conquer his enemies and reward his friends. I thrilled with the great resolve. the glazed eyes of my camel's brightness at the new note in my husky voice with great effort. After many attempts, they gained their feet. With pitiful perseverance, they pushed on toward the north, where something within me said that we would find Babylon. We found water. We passed into more fertile country where grass and fruit were found in the trails of Babylon, because of the soul of the free man looks at life as a series of problems to be solved and solves them, while the soul of a slave whines, "What can I do? I am but a slave." How about that, Targad? Does that empty make thy head exceedingly clear? Are you ready to take the roads that leads back to self-respect? Can you see the world in its true color? Hast thou the desire to pay the honest debts, however many they may be, and once again be a man respected in Babylon? Moisture came to the eyes of the youth. He rose eagerly to his knees. Thou hast shown me a vision. Already I feel the soul of a free man surge within me, but have fared you upon your own return, questioned an interested listener. Where the determination the way can be found, Dabsir replied. I now have the determination. I set out to find a way. First I visited every man to whom I was indebted and begged his indulgence until I could earn that which to repay. Most of them met gladly, several reviled me, but others offered to help me. One indeed did give me the very help I needed. It was Mathan, the gold lender. Learning that I had been a camel tender in Syria, he sent me to an old Nabator, camel trader, just commissioned by our good king to purchase many herds of sound camels to the great expedition. With him, my knowledge of camels I put to good use. Gradually, I was able to repay every copper and every piece of silver. Then, at last, I could hold up in my head and feel that I was an honorable man among men. Again, Dabasir turned to his food, and with a snail he said loudly to the herd in the kitchen, "The food is cold. Bring me more meat, fresh from the roasting. Bring thou also very large portions for Tarkad, the son of my old friend, who is hungry and shall eat with me." So ended the tale of Dabsir, the camel trader of Babylon. He found his own soul when he had realized a great truth that had been known, and used by wise men along before his time. It has led men of all ages out of difficulties and into success, and will continue to do so for those who have the wisdom to understand its magic power. It is for any man who reads these lines. Where the determination is, the way can be made. Well, that was a chapter on the richest man in Babylon here. Like I said, this is my affirmation video. You can see I wrote it. Down. This was the camel trader. My name's R.O. and that was a chapter on the richest man in Babylon, the camel trader. Until next time, I'll talk to you later.